Hi there, it's Danielle with the Bite Size Bake Shop. Today we are going to make the recipe for the applesauce spice loaf or applesauce muffins. It's the same recipe, just depending on what pan you might have available. You can feel free to use the loaf pan, a regular 9-inch loaf, or muffin tins with liners in them. So your recipe calls for a cup of flour, a third a cup of sugar, half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a pinch of salt. And that was all included in the bag that was provided to you. To your dry ingredients, you're gonna need a third of a cup of shredded apple, some white vinegar, and a little bit of water. This recipe is based on a recipe from the 1930s called crazy cake or crazy muffin. And it's crazy because there's no eggs in it. So this recipe uses the chemical reaction of the baking soda and the vinegar in order to give rise to our muffins or loaf. In this instance, the eggs were one of the leavening agents. We've left them out because of allergy concerns, so the vinegar and the baking soda will provide a little bit of that poof. So for my recipe today, I'm just going to tilt my camera down so you can see my workspace. I have a box grater and my apple, and I'm leaving the skin on just because I like the way that it looks in my mixture. And I'm just going to grate about a third of a cup of apple, which will probably take most of this piece of apple. The apple will provide some extra moisture and great flavor. And we're also going to put in half a cup of unsweetened applesauce that was also included in your kit. So we'll get the flavor from the applesauce, the flavor from the apples itself, a little bit of that cinnamon flavor, and you can always throw in a little extra cinnamon if you like that flavor. This is going to feel pretty wet, and I'm going to show you when I lift up my box grater. This is what our mixture looks like underneath. So you can see it's kind of wet looking. I'm going to pack it into about a third of a cup. And we're going to get started with our mixture in just a second. So this recipe, it's nice because you can mix it all in one bowl and you don't need to even use a hand mixer. It can all be done by hand. So I have my mixing bowl here. To my mixing bowl, I'm going to add my bag of dry ingredients. So this was 1 cup of flour, a third of a cup of sugar, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And put that all in the bowl. And I'm just going to give that a little stir to make sure that all of the cinnamon is incorporated with the flour and the sugar. It'll look like a nice even color. Now to this mixture, we're going to add our wet ingredients. We're going to add in our applesauce, the little container that was included in your bag. You can just dump that right in there. I'm going to use my scraper to clear it out, get all of that applesauce goodness in the bowl. And then we're going to add our shredded apple pieces. Your recipe might end up making more than 6 muffins if you chose to do that. I am going to add my vinegar and my water. So I'm going to need a teaspoon of white vinegar. And again, this is in order to have a chemical reaction with the baking soda and provide the leavening for our recipe. We need to mix the vinegar with the baking soda. It's similar to the experiment that you do when you're a kid to make a volcano, right? The vinegar and the baking soda kind of bubble and they will explode. And then I'm going to add a third of a cup of water. And that all goes into the bowl together, and we're just going to mix our batter until it's all combined and there's no more flour pieces left. So you should go ahead and preheat your oven if you haven't done so already. You're gonna wanna do 375. These will bake for about 12 to 15 minutes, and then you'll check them and bake them another 5 or so minutes. So about 18 minutes altogether is my guess, but every oven is a little bit different. So you'll want to start peeking at them around the 15-minute mark. And I have prepared a cupcake pan. I have some liners, and I'm going to use, just for the ease of scooping, I like this ice cream scooper or disher. This is what I use most of the time to portion out my cupcakes or muffins. It makes sure that you have a nice uniform amount in each of the little holes. So I'm going to take my disher, I'm going to scoop, and I'm going to drop it right into my cupcake holders. Again, you could make this all in a loaf pan. Just make sure you spray the loaf pan with non-stick cooking spray. And I'm going to have more batter than will fit in these 6 liners. So I'm going to add a couple more, probably 6 more liners, and we'll see how many muffins we get out of this. I chose muffins instead of a loaf because of what my family prefers. If you were going to make a loaf, it would need slightly longer cook time, probably closer to 30 minutes or 35 minutes. My kids prefer muffins, so that's what I'm doing here in the demo. But like I said, same and basic recipe. It does look like this mix will make about 12 and 9 or 10, depending on how full you fill the muffin cups. So I'm to the end of my batter, and I'm just going to take my spatula and I'm going to scrape it all down just to make sure I get all of that batter into my muffin tin. And then I'm just going to plop that right in here. So I got 11 good-sized muffins out of this one bowl of batter. That's a little decent run. So these, like I said, are going to go into a 375-degree oven, and they're going to bake at least 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll check them to see if they're done. So we'll check back in a few minutes, and you can see how my progress is coming. So my muffins are out of the oven. It took about 15 minutes, and you'll want to check them for their doneness. So you can see my muffins are all beautiful golden brown. You can see the little bits of apple skin in there. And I'm just going to use a bamboo skewer, or you could use a toothpick or a butter knife, and just stick it in. And you want to make sure that it's clean when it comes out. If it's not clean, they could use another minute or so in the oven. So those look good. So I'm just going to take these out. I'm going to let them cool. And then once they're cool enough to take out of the pan, you can enjoy them warm, or you can let them cool completely and store them in an airtight container. That's it for today. Thanks so much for baking with me.